Okay, hi everyone. I hope you're doing well. Welcome along to this week's Nutrition and Online Clinic. I hope everyone's had a really nice week, a nice healthy week. You're obviously tuning in because you have some interest in how to optimize digestion, which is what we're talking about this week and the last couple of weeks as well. So we're going to be really focusing this week on how to reduce some of that really chronic inflammation that a lot of people are getting in their stomach and their digestive system and their digestive tract. We're also talking about how to improve digestive regularity and dealing with things like constipation. So I have a short little presentation to share with you. I'm just going to put my sunnies on because I'm sat outside in beautiful Snow's Beach and it's really glary, so I'm just, hope you don't mind, put these on while I can look at my screen. So one of the main issues with gut inflammation is not being able to pass stools regularly enough, so not being able to go to the toilet as often as we should. I'm going to talk a little bit about the stats of constipation in the presentation, but the reality is that so many people now struggle to move their bowels, and that leads to more complications than you could possibly ever imagine. Basically, if you're not getting rid of waste product from your bowels, it's the main way that we detoxify our body. We're going to get a lot of backlog of toxins in the system, and they cycle back into the bloodstream, they get back to the liver, they can trigger inflammation in the liver and the kidneys and all sorts of different issues throughout our eliminatory organs. So it's really important that we're shifting waste product out as regularly as possible. Now, it used to be that if you're not going to the toilet at least once a day, that was considered constipation. Certainly when I was at university about 17 years ago, that is what we were taught. You know, regular bowel activity is once a day, 1 to 3 times a day, ideally. So you're thinking like 1 meal in, 1 meal out. That's kind of the general rule. But nowadays, people's systems are so unwell and so inefficient that they're actually they've put the definition of constipation as if you're not shifting your bowels, or if you're shifting your bowels less than 3 times a week, and obviously if it, to 75% of the times you're going, it's a real struggle. So they've really changed the goalposts, and this is not because they suddenly realized, oh, we were wrong, constipation is actually this now. It's because people are so unwell. The whole, the whole population is getting less and less less effective in their digestion, that they thought they needed to change the goalposts. So our sickening nation, if you like, is changing what defines certain ailments. And the same for diabetes. We can get into that another time, but it used to be that normal blood sugar levels were accepted at a certain range, which was a much lower range than what they're accepted at now. So, and it's just because everyone's getting more and more sick and moving further away from normal healthy. So anyway, that's a different topic. So we're talking about how you can improve your digestion in terms of your regularity first and foremost, and how that can reduce inflammation within the gut. Because if you imagine you've got stagnant toxic waste, stools that aren't passing through, you're going to create a lot of interest from the immune system. The immune system is going to be very interested in those toxins hanging around and fermenting and all the different things sitting in your gut that are going to be irritating your digestive tract. So that's one reason we get inflammation in the gut, because we're not going to the toilet as regularly as possible. As we should. And another reason, which we'll talk about a lot more next week because it's a big topic, is something called leaky gut. And leaky gut really is a huge issue, bigger than we can even imagine again. So probably I'd say 80% of people will have some kind of leaky gut situation going on. That's where the permeability of the digestive tract lining gets increased in permeability. So we've got toxins and food particles and undigested food and various things, microbes getting in and out of the bloodstream because they're passing through the gut straight into the blood. So these are the kind of things we're going to go through in a little presentation today, and how that triggers often autoimmune issues, but just generally attracts activity of the immune system, which can cause inflammation, bloating, pain, discomfort, all these things that you experience in your gut when you have things like IBS, and other sorts of issues. So without further ado, let's crack on. I'm going to bring up the presentation and see how we go. Okay, so here we go. We're talking about how to combat constipation and how to flatten your abs from the inside out. So we're going to go through some of those main points I've just talked about now. If we recall last week, we were talking really quite specifically about digestion being a top-down process where it starts in the mouth and in the brain and the mouth with our salivary enzymes, and then of course our stomach is kind of the first area where our food is really physically and mechanically broken down, and that's obviously the first big part of the digestive process. And we know that if we don't have enough digestive juices, if we don't have the right enzymes, if we don't have the right stomach level of stomach acid there, then we're not going to get as efficient breakdown and liberation of nutrients as we possibly could. And of course that stimulates a cascade, a whole host of issues that follow, because if we're not getting the right signals in the stomach to tell the rest of the digestive system to kick in and do what those parts should do, like the small and large intestine, then the whole system breaks down, and that's again what can lead to constipation. If we're not breaking our food down properly, the signaling mechanisms are not getting fed through. So we really need good levels of stomach acid, good levels of digestive enzymes to have regular and efficient bowel activity. So that's kind of what's happening at the stomach level, and we talked about Proactizyme as a brilliant product to take if you are having things like indigestion symptoms, or if you just know that you're not breaking down your food efficiently, you're not going to the toilet regularly enough. I would certainly suggest starting with some of those plant-based enzymes called Proactizyme, and at the same time introducing some of the natural foods that can really start shifting the bowels, so really start increasing bowel regularity, and that's what we'll be talking about today. So once the food is broken up and chimed up in the stomach, it's passed through into the intestines, and the small intestines is where a lot of our absorption starts to take place. So we have liberation of B vitamins and zinc, particularly in the top part of the small intestine. So really important that the food is broken down properly and those nutrients are liberated by enzymes so that they can actually be absorbed. And of course we move into the large intestine, or the colon, where we have a lot of water reabsorption, mineral absorption, and a lot of activity of our good our probiotics, our good bacteria. That's something that we will talk about much more specifically, if not next week, the week after, and how this affects the whole body health is unbelievable. There's so much research coming out now in terms of what your gut microbiome looks like, your gut microbiome, and how well you are in general. So we know our gut microbes definitely have an influence over body weight, immune activity, mood, brain health, and these sorts of things. So really, really important to make sure that we've got a very, very high level of good beneficial bacteria. So we'll talk about that, if not next week, the week after. Really, really important. So some of the issues that can then kind of come up in the small intestine, so we've moved now from the stomach into the small intestine, are, as I've mentioned, constipation. So we're not shifting stools through, so when the colon's not getting the message to let go of the waste products. So that's obviously to do with the mobility or the motility that happens at the small intestine, which is further up the chain. And of course something called leaky gut, and how that affects our immune system so dramatically. Leaky gut is, as I've said, is where we get relatively big holes or perforations in the wall of our small intestine, and then we get all sorts of nasties and unwanted molecules going through into the bloodstream, which kicks off a response from the immune system. The immune system can then get really irritated and really excited and aggravated and start attacking all sorts of different tissues in the body, joints, skin, even the brain. All sorts of things can get affected just because the gut is not working as efficiently, or it's become compromised in some way. So just a reminder of what is optimal digestion. So we need to be getting as much nutritional value out of our foods as quickly and efficiently as possible, not too fast and not too slow, without any symptoms of pain or inflammation or excessive bloating or any kind of digestive upset that you would describe as uncomfortable. Most people don't have this, let's be honest. So constipation is an absolute huge issue for so many people, I've already said. Now, one of the main reasons is because we're not eating the right kinds of foods, we're not eating the right foods at the right times. So most people are not getting enough fibre in their diet, and this is something we've heard in the media for years and years and years, but it still keeps being overlooked. So that's one reason. The other reason, obviously, we've already discussed, is people having low stomach acid, low digestive enzymes already in their system, so they're not getting that top-down kind of prompting, if you like, from the upper digestive tract to say, let's start moving food through. So it's very typical for what we call a SAD diet, the standard American diet, which is basically the standard Western diet, to kind of have people's digestive systems fall into a pattern of taking 65 to 100 hours of transit time. So that's from the time you eat a food to the time you've excreted the waste from that food, when it really should be around about 24 hours. So it's massively slowed down. It's become very, very sluggish. And I've already mentioned how the medical world have changed the goalposts on what describes constipation. So anything that's less than 3 movements a week, and of course straining up to 75% of the time, we know that we should be having at least one healthy bowel movement every single day. And yeah, it's going to be a little bit of give and take there, obviously, but if you're not going every single day, if you're going every other day, but you're moving, excuse the detail here, but you're moving a really good volume of waste, then that's probably okay. But really, we want to be ridding waste as quickly as we're putting, as much as we're sort of putting meals into the body 3 times a day, and then 3 times a day we're letting waste go. And all of that has to do with how well your liver is functioning, as I say, how much digestive enzyme activity, etc. you have. So there's a lot of kind of pieces of the puzzle that we have to get right. One of the big solutions we talked about last week is, of course, taking some digestive enzymes and potentially some hydrochloric acid with those enzymes as well. At the same time, it's having really good levels of fibre and good bacteria going into the system. Now, our bacteria generally only have a lifespan of about 7 days within the gut. So if the environment of the gut is not conducive to keeping these bacteria alive anyway, we're going to have really, really short-lived activity of good bacteria, which is why people are taking high-quality probiotics these days. When we talk about how people become dysbiotic, as in they get an imbalance between the good and bad bacteria and other microbes, fungi, yeast, etc., that can overgrow within the gut. How this comes about, again, there's so many different factors now, but generally it's stress related, it's diet related, but it can also stem back to what happened when you're developing in your mother's womb, what happened through your birth experience. So cesarean babies and babies who are not breastfed are much more likely, incredibly more likely, to have a poor start in life in terms of the good bacteria population in their gut. And of course that can have a cascade of autoimmune and immune-based issues later on in life, as we're finding out. So the other things, going back to constipation, I'm jumping all over here because the gut is such a complex beast, but it's so interrelated as well. There's so many factors that come into play. But talking about increasing digestive ability and digestive regularity, we want lots of water combined with these fibers that we're taking in. And we're talking about fibers from fruits and vegetables, not bread, not cereals, particularly processed and boxed and refined cereals that you get in the supermarket shelf. They have been processed and stripped of fiber, so please do not be fooled when you're reading a box of cereal and it's saying high in fiber. It really was probably high in fiber with the raw ingredients, but by the time it's become the cereal that you're buying and eating, there ain't no fiber in there. So we really want to be getting these fibers from things like seeds and nuts, fruits and vegetables. Of course, exercise is really important. If you just get up and move, that's going to help stimulate metabolism. It's going to help get everything firing. But as much as exercise, we need rest as well. And excuse me, what I'm finding with my clients, and particularly over the years, is that people who struggle with constipation and moving their bowels regularly is they're just not resting enough. They're too much on the go. They're too stressed. Their body's too into overdrive. And what we know about digestion is that it's on the kind of rest and relaxation side of the nervous system. So when we're resting, we have a saying, it's rest and digest. That's what we call a parasympathetic nervous system. So when we're kind of meditating, chilling out, I don't know if you've ever noticed if you've gone for a massage and in the middle of the massage you get this really embarrassing kind of like gurgling and digestive activity noise that's coming from your stomach, and that's a clear sign that when you're relaxed and when you're chilling out, your digestive system can kick in and start working properly. So really, really good to balance the amount of activity that you're doing with the amount of rest for good digestion. Now, being consistent with all of these things, making sure that you're taking your enzymes, making sure that you're taking in your fiber, you're drinking enough water, you're exercising and resting. It's quite a big job, but being consistent at all these things is what's going to really get you long-term regular bowel activity. And along with that comes obviously a more flatter stomach because you've cleared out the bowels for one, but also you're getting rid of those toxins more regularly. So you're not attracting the attention of your immune system. You're not stimulating an immune response, which can cause swelling and inflammation and pain in the stomach. So here, it's really funny actually. I'm here in beautiful Snells Beach, which is north of Auckland. I'm staying with my aunt, and we just had breakfast, which was lovely, sitting out on the balcony. And she put out some lovely fruit salad and organic yogurt and stuff. And then she brings out this container of ground flaxseed. And I was like, oh, this is brilliant. I'm talking about this in my clinic this morning. So I've already had mine this morning. And what we're talking about now is one of the most gold standard foods for increasing bowel regularity. If you are bunged up and constipated, here's what you want to do. And it works absolutely 100% of the time if done right. So what you need to do is take 2 to 3 heaped teaspoons of ground flaxseed, that's linseed, and it has to be ground, so the really powdery form, okay, so not the whole seeds, which are good, but they're not going to have the same fibrous effect. So they have to be ground up, and what you want to do is put these 2 to 3 heaped teaspoons in about 3/4 of a pint of water, ideally warm water, so a part boiled and then the rest cold, so it's a warm liquid so you can drink it quite easily. And you want to knock this back on an empty stomach first thing in the morning. If you're drinking liquid chlorophyll or phytolife, so something that's really green based, you want to have that first and then do this flaxseed solution. So you want to do this first thing in the morning and before bed as well. Have a good night's sleep and then repeat in the morning. So if you can exercise in the morning as well, even if it's just a 10-minute walk just to get everything going, this will really work for you. So it's 2 to 3 heaped teaspoons and about 3/4 of a pint of lukewarm water first thing in the morning and again before bed. And just keep repeating that 2 times a day until you start to get a movement. Now, generally, this will work the first time you take it. But for some people it does take 2 or 3 days if they've really got issues. Now, when I have clients who introduce the enzymes, they do this ground flaxseed solution morning and night for about a week, and they increase the fiber and water content in their diet regularly and consistently. They no longer have issues with constipation. So it really can be that simple. And I know people that have been struggling for years and years, and they're on suppositories and all sorts of things, when there is a very simple solution. Okay, I want to talk now a little bit more about, or give you a little bit of an introduction as to what we're going to be talking about more next week. And that is about the kind of immune activity that can kick off within the gut itself, and then also systemically, and systemic just means throughout the rest of the body. So what we know is that 70% of our immune system, of our immune activity, is actually residing in the gut. So, and actually if you think about it, it's no wonder that we have this amount of immunity within our gut, because the gut, our whole digestive tract from our mouth all the way through down to our anus, is basically outside the body. If you think about it, it's the only part of the body that can easily connect with the outside world, and of course all the toxins and all of the chemicals and the bugs, and of course our trigger foods that we're eating, things that can kick off our immunity. So there has to be a huge level of immune system in that canal, because that's really exposed, very, very exposed to potentially harmful things. And our body's whole mantra, if you like, its main purpose is survive. So there has to be a huge amount of activity in the gut. Now, one of the things that can trigger this immunity and basically put an upset in the balance of the immune system are foods that we call trigger foods, things that stimulate or generate a high level of immune reaction. And one of those issues is, of course, gluten, or one of those triggers is gluten, and how that is becoming more and more and more of an issue for people. And gluten directly increases leaky gut in everybody, and we'll talk about that next week. That may seem like a bold claim, but there is research out there now, I'm going to share that with you, to prove and suggest that everybody who eats gluten gets leaky gut for even just a small amount of time. Some people who are lucky enough and kind of fit and healthy enough, and their systems are not as reactive, those increased permeability junctions, those increased gaps within the digestive tract, can heal and regenerate really quickly. For others, that healing mechanism isn't there, and that's how this can cause, or how gluten can cause big issues. So we know that gluten is a clear trigger for intestinal inflammation and, as I say, impermeability, so increasing the gateways, if you like, from the gut into the blood system. This can lead to full-blown systemic inflammation, so inflammation that will cause an array of symptoms. It could be joint pain, it could be skin eruptions, it could be acne, it could be brain fog, cognitive issues, and all sorts of complications within the body. So one of the molecules within gluten is gliadin, and this stimulates the activity of zonulin. Now, zonulin is a molecule which tells the gut to become more permeable. So every time, and this is for everyone because this is just the physiology of it, every time we eat gluten, we get an increased activity of zonulin, so we get an increased opening of the gut wall. As I say, for some people, they can that process will reverse very quickly, and the gluten and the gliadin will not become a huge issue for these people. But for about 1 in 30 people, this becomes a real big issue. So, irrespective of whether somebody is celiac, as in they have a true gluten allergy or not, everybody still gets increased permeability of the gut wall when they eat gluten. And just some people can deal with it better than others. So in my practice and in kind of my experience with clients, the most effect we get with improving health, and if people want weight loss or whatever it is really to cut down massively the amount of gluten that we're exposing the gut to. Because the more your gut works efficiently, the more you're going to absorb nutrition wise, the less inflammation you're going to have in the stomach, the more your metabolism will be able to work effectively, and everything just works in harmony as it should. And we know that when our body's working in harmony, we have better health and we have a much better ability to shed unwanted toxins and unwanted body fat. So really, really important to focus on reducing gluten as much as possible. There's still a lot of people I come across and go, oh, it's rubbish that, it's all just, it's a hype and it's a fad to cut out gluten. But it's because the literature is showing us now why it's becoming an issue. And of course, the excessive bombardment we have, exposure to increased environmental toxins, the stress that we have going through our body, just mental stresses, physical stresses, our total environment, our external environment, which is connected very closely with the gut, as we know, because all we need to do is open our mouth and breathe stuff in, and we've got bad stuff in our system. Our whole system is completely bombarded now. And so before, where our immune system might have been able to deal with a little bit of gluten going in, it was kind of the least of its worries. Now it's so overhyped, it's so over exhausted that it gets really out of control. So this is why we're seeing, well, one of the reasons I should say, why we're seeing increased sensitivities and intolerances and allergies to things like gluten, particularly in children. Because their poor little systems are just not able to cope with the amount of stress that's going through from the foods they're eating to the environment they're living in. So we're going to talk a lot more about this next week if it's of interest to you. We're going to go into gluten a little bit more. One thing I can highly recommend is watching, you can probably find it on YouTube, it's a documentary that came out very recently in the last sort of year or so called What with Wheat. And I would highly recommend that. In fact, I'll try and find a link and put it in the group so you guys can check that out. At least that'll give you a little bit of a background and a bit of a startup information before we cover it next week. So that's what we've been talking about today, is how we can really start to reduce that inflammation in the stomach, get the bowels moving more effectively, and just kind of start to help that area reduce down and get some activity in terms of nervous activity, positive nervous activity. So when our nerves that connect to our abdominal muscles are more relaxed and not stimulated because of digestive upset, you're going to get better response in terms of your exercise that you're doing. You're going to get a flatter, more toned stomach. And I know that sounds a little bit far-fetched, but it's absolutely true. When I've worked with clients and their digestive system has improved remarkably, you can really start to see their body fat shed around that area because of the less stress that they have, less cortisol, less inflammation. And everything just sort of starts to work itself out. It's not an overnight process. I will definitely not lie to you there. It's a kind of a long-term health approach, but it's maintainable and sustainable, unlike any other fatty kind of thing. So I hope that's been of use to you guys, talking about the gut and improving mobility, regularity, and of course reducing inflammation to help get a flatter, more comfortable abdominal area. So I'm just going to jump back and see how we go. Get rid of this now. See you again. There we go. Cool. All right. So thank you very much for tuning in and listening to the clinic. I hope, as I said, it's been of use to you. Any questions at all, please personal message me if it's all personal and you don't want other people to know, or certainly just put any questions that you have in the Facebook group, the online nutrition health clinic group that's on Facebook, and I will keep posting details of the next week's clinic. So thanks for tuning in. Take care. Have a really brilliant day or night, whatever it is for you, and we'll see you really soon. Take care. Lots of love. Bye.